Hi there. Welcome to Loew Vineyards. I'm Rachel. I'm the granddaughter of the owners of this vineyard and the winery. I'm a fifth generation winemaker, a third generation in the vines, and we would like to welcome you to our property that's one of my favorite places on earth. I view it as like my second home. It's actually my grandparents' primary residence. They live on the property. And typically when we have people come in for tastings, we have this whole nice spiel as to the reason why my family is in wine, and we share our family history with you. But before I do that for this event, I just wanted to get some ground rules down, and out of the way. So, we're really excited to be hosting this event, a fundraiser for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. 10% of all of our sales today is going directly to the foundation. And so it being something that we're excited about with music and a food truck, we just want to make sure that we're holding everybody accountable for adhering to the social distancing regulations and the health guidelines for what we're dealing with the pandemic. So, and also since my grandparents live on the property, we want to make sure we're all being safe. So if you're going to be, getting up and walking around in the vineyard, which is you're totally welcome to do, just make sure if you're, adhering to the social distancing guidelines, and that if you're going to be approaching the tasting room, if you're going to go in the bathroom, or use the facilities at all, and if you're going to be straying from your group, that you're wearing a mask. So once you're seated, you're good. You can take it off. But when you're walking around, I would just be very vigilant and considerate of those around you. We want to make sure we're having a safe event and that we're able to all have fun. So that being said, that's done. And so now is a little bit of a history as to why my family is in this industry. And it really starts 2 centuries ago almost. And my grandfather, Bill Loew, one of the co-owners, he's a third generation winemaker at least. Evidentiarily we were able to trace it back to the 1870s. But when I've asked my grandfather, he says that we've been producing wine for centuries. So that's something to look into. We're actually on this property here. We're the 4th oldest existing winery in the state of Maryland. We've been working and growing grapes here for about 38 years, so since 1982. But as I had mentioned, my family's been producing wine in Europe, or in general in Europe, since the 1800s at least. So if you actually checked in and got your flight and your glass, you should have received one of these, and if you haven't, I would recommend go get one. It's an infographic with one side our history and the other side is a map. So after you're done tasting the wines, and if you want to walk around with a glass of wine or share a bottle with some friends, you can stroll through the vineyard. We're very close to harvest. It's a great time to see everything. So with our history, I grew up with having a vineyard in the family, and it was a really cool way to learn about plants and farming and how things are processed from juice to ferment into wine. And as I grew up, I started learning about my grandfather's history. And my grandfather's actually a Holocaust survivor. He is one of the few and only survivors of his family and extended family. There's over, I think, 100 people we were able to account for. And his family, the way that I learned about it and viewed our history with wine, is they, in the 1800s, had this empire of producing mead. And if you don't know what mead is wine that's made out of fermented honey. And mead was a huge part of the drinking culture there. I mean, there was, in the area my grandfather grew up, there was tons of meaderies and distilleries and breweries, and it was a really a very booming time for that city in Loew, Poland, in the region Galicia. And so my grandfather, his father had a meadery. My grandfather's grandfather had one. So my great-great-grandfather had one. And my grandfather's uncle. And my grandfather's father actually had about 9 brothers. And I think there were a couple of sisters in there. But the brothers were all involved in producing and selling and distributing mead. And so it was this very profitable and prestigious businesses that they had. So between World War I and World War II, unfortunately, because of World War II, I mean, the whole industry was demolished. The whole mead industry was demolished. But my family's businesses were as well. And my grandfather, being a Holocaust survivor, I mean, he went through tragedies that we could never imagine. But he survived, and what he remembers actually, you know, when he came over to the US and met my grandmother and had kids and then retired and then wanted to start a winery and actually had done home brewing over the years. So he said that what haunted him the most was the smell of barrels. He always remembered, had a very fond smell that he would remember of the barrels in his family's winery. And I think that's kind of what pushed him to want to start a commercial vineyard and winery here. Besides the fact that it, you know, it was fun and it was, you know, it's something as a second career, I guess. And so, you know, in 1982, around then, maybe 1981, my grandparents, after my grandfather was about to retire, they went and looked for land and in Mount Airy, because they had been living in Rockville. And my grandfather and my grandmother went to Elk Run and noticed that they were growing grapes. They started 2 years before we did. And my grandfather and my grandmother thought, okay, if they're growing grapes 2 miles down the road, and this seems like a good property, after doing all the testing, soil sampling and whatever, they said, we can do that here. So that's exactly what we've been doing since then. So now we're on the 5th generation as me. And I take a lot of pride in this property and in this production. We do make meads as a tribute to my grandfather's family. We're releasing 2 more today. I hope you enjoy them. I hope you feel as connected with my family, with our history, as much as I do. If you have any questions about the history, feel free to ask us. But that being said, you know, starting with the following videos, you'll be able to try through the wines as a guided tasting with some videos with me. And I think we have 14 wines available for sampling. So the way that the tasting sheet works is they're numbered 1 through 14, and I would try them in that order. Otherwise, it's like brushing your teeth and drinking orange juice. It's really not that bad, but like, you get the idea. So when you try it in that order, then you're able to have a nice progression with your palate. So as you're sitting on our grounds, enjoying the views, I'm biased, but I think we have some of the best countryside views, sipping the wine, listening to music, eating some food. Just think that, you know, you're sampling a piece of history. You know, the way that I view the vineyard is if the vineyard wasn't here, a piece of evidence of my grandfather's survival wouldn't be here. So thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy your stay here.